Why would you put a tank gun on an aircraft? Well, I will tell you in today's video. Welcome to Military Aviation History. My name is Chris and I talk about all things air power. New videos coming every Thursday on MAD, Military Aviation History Day, and this one is also sponsored by World of Tanks because, well, in this case it makes sense. Let's jump right into it. Okay, so in this video we're going to explore the following questions. Why was the B-25 Mitchell, a medium bomber, equipped with a tank gun? How did the development and testing of the weapon go? What were the results? And then I want to draw it out a little bit further than that and talk about, what we learn about this, the expectations and reality in warfare. And specifically here, sometimes we develop technical solutions to issues that are so specialized that they either perfectly fit into the requirements of a force and deliver a service to that force that without it would have a very detrimental effect, or that specialization of this weapon is in fact constraining it to the point where it essentially becomes useless or superfluous in the wider aspirations and the wider operations of this force. So this is going to be an interesting discussion and an interesting case study on just that. Okay, let's start with the why first. We're sort of in the 1930s, late 1930s, early 1940s, and the United States Army Air Corps is looking for an aircraft that can conduct both strafing, ground attack, as well as anti-shipping duties. And the low-level anti-shipping duties is really the focal point here. However, keeping in mind that of course the development of a new aircraft takes 3 to 5 years, the Army Air Corps looks around for options and it finds the B-25 Mitchell that is in development, that is already being fielded. And although it is a bomber, it offers that potential of being a great anti-shipping aircraft armed with a big boom boom. The B-25 at this point is not an attacker aircraft just yet. It is a bomber. It has a bombardier nose, and there you find a single fixed 50 cal as well as a flex 50. And I'm gonna have some footage here in the background as well from my friends at the Sandbar Mitchell Restoration Project, as well as Miss Mitchell from the CAF Minnesota wing, to show you some of the internal layouts of the B-25 as well in the back of the video. Definitely check out those associations as well because they do some spectacular work. In fact, I'm a member of the Sandbar Mitchell guys as well, and yeah, they do fantastic work. Links in the description. Going back on topic. So you have the bombardier nose. In the field, what starts being developed is a strafer variant of the B-25. This starts out as a field mod. Basically, the units on the ground fit 50 cals, and they have about 4 to 8 50s in there, which provides them a lot of good fixed forward firepower for strafing missions against Japanese positions in the Pacific. You also have, of course, the blister packs that start appearing on either side of the B-25 as its life progresses. That adds another 2 to 4 50 cals to the aircraft. And then also as the turret is being relocated from that rear dorsal position to a more frontal position, the upper turret that is, it can also be swung forward and then just locked into 90-degree angle. And then you essentially have, well, 8 plus 4 plus 2, well, yeah, you can do the math of how many 50 cals you have there facing forward, and that's a lot of good firepower. But the Army Air Corps and the Army Air Force looked at it, and as the development was happening, they were like, well, this is all good, but none of this has the power of a 75mm in terms of anti-shipping potentials. Can the 50s, do AA suppression on ships? Yes, absolutely. Can they sink small fishing vessels or trawlers? Yes, absolutely. But even like with large merchant ships, they were like, you have to put on a lot of holes in that ship in order to achieve that effect. And the destructive potential of the 50 cals, at a close range, maybe you can make some holes in a merchant ship, but you really need to make Swiss cheese out of it in order for it to go down. And the destructive potential of a 75 is just going to make life so much easier because it's going to blow big holes into the side of the merchant, and then it's going to sink a lot quicker. And also, the damage resistance in terms of damage repair, shutting off bulkheads and so on is going to be a lot more complicated. Maybe that's a topic for Druck and Niffel there to talk about that. Beyond that, of course, maybe the requirement to attack destroyers. Anything with light cruiser and up is probably going to be very difficult even with a 75, but you can already see sort of what's going on here. Basically, they want to go away from the 50s and install a weapon that with a few hits is supposed to have a higher chance of taking out a ship. Now, finding a gun. We have to find a gun for this, right? The development of area weapons in the US shuts down round about 1932. Why does it shut down? Well, because the US goes with the 50 cal as their standardized armament for all aircraft, both fighter or back then pursuit aircraft, as well as bombers, attackers, you name it. The 50 is a good weapon. You know, it has a good rate of fire and it has a good ammo capacity as well. You can cram a lot of rounds into an aircraft, but it does not have, as a single round to round basis, the destructive potential of a 20 or any round that goes upwards from that. For the US, the 50 in World War II turned out to be just what was needed. Other countries needed other weapons. I have a full 1-hour video on all this weapons spiel, by the way, if you want to watch it. Now, in 1945, however, there is renewed testing on bigger caliber guns. And the US, quite rightly in some ways, you could say, says, well, you know, the destructive potential of a 20 over a 50 cal is nice and shiny. However, we can field a lot more 50 cals into an aircraft than you can field 20 mils, plus we have more ammo. So we're going to stay with the 12.7 by 99 millimeter cartridge. And instead of going with a 20 mil, we will go up from that. We will go with a 39 mil. We see that then in the Era Cobra as well as the King Cobra, 39 millimeter round. And we will go with a 75 millimeter round as well. The Ordnance Committee then recommends the development of exactly this type of weapon in 1938. And firing trials of the 75 millimeter cannon are being conducted on a B-18 Bolo. And here they are realizing that actually, yeah, we can fit a gun like this into an aircraft and it works. We do have to strengthen the aircraft accordingly, structurally speaking. And we also definitely need to lighten the gun as far as possible. And it needs a better fire control system, but it works. On the whole, it works. And then from that 1948 sort of test, we go into 1942, that's what it was, 1942, with the development of a manual loaded 75 millimeter cannon, that is the T13, or becomes the T13, as well as a semi-auto cannon, the T9. Now I'm going to focus only on the manual one because that's the one that was basically installed in the B-25. And the choice here fell on a modified 75 millimeter gun that already existed with a new mount. And this is designation hell right here now coming up, because these guns go through so many different iterations of labeling that is a bit annoying. So the B-25G, as far as I can figure out, went with the M4 cannon and the M5 mount, whereas the B-25H went with the M5 cannon and the M9 mount. However, if you just want to sum it up as the T13E1, for example, or T13 generally speaking, that works fine as well. Let's not get hung up on these designations too much. The modifications here are mainly to reduce the length of the recoil mechanism, reduce the weight of the aircraft gun considerably, because this is the same gun that is on the M4 Sherman tank. Yes, America's quintessential tank that, for example, I think it was the chieftain who said, the tank that won the war. And this is, of course, where those tanks come in. So if you are fascinated by these targets, vehicles, then you should definitely check out World of Tanks. World of Tanks is exactly what it says. You get to command over 800 authentic targets across more than 40 battlefields, and that in a hugely successful online free-to-play game where you can drive and battle with friends at your heart's content. It has something for everyone. Want to be fast and sneaky? Get a light tank. Want to drive softly and carry a big gun? Tank destroyer it is. Want to lead a charge and have an answer for every moment? Medium tanks. Or do you want to have shells bounce off you and trot on like nothing happened? Well, there's a heavy tank for you. And if you want to stay at range and just chew bubblegum, well, artillery has you covered. Train your crews, personalize and upgrade your tanks, charge, flank and win tense firefights. It's all possible in World of Tanks. Head on over to World of Tanks via the link in the description. Use the code COMBAT to get 7 days of premium, 250,000 credits, a premium tank and some rentals. Oh, and it's not just for new players. No. If you are a returning player, you are also showered with gifts. So make sure to use the link in the description and tap in that code for your very own bonus. Okay, so we still need to get the gun into the actual B-25. This happens with the first installation on a B-25C. Later on, this whole arrangement then becomes rechristened the B-25G. in early 1942. And they noticed after firing trials, basically they take off, you know, the whole frontal section of a B-25, they put it on a beach and they shoot round after round after round into the sand dunes. They noticed that it works, but the nose definitely needs more strengthening. So they strengthened it to the point, if the gun were to fire at 115% of its normal charge, that should be fine. The emphasis here is on should be, because in the field, one of the things that continuously popped up is that yes, there was in fact damage on sort of the leading edge at the wing root. You can sort of see how that happens as the gun is installed basically below that point, and the whole recoil gets absorbed into that specific area of the fuselage, whereas the wing sort of sits stably on the outside of the aircraft, if that makes sense, right? And then also there was the constant need to replace rivets. The aircraft also gets a very front heavy, nose heavy, that is. You know, it's basically a 1,300 pound gun that sits forward of the center of gravity, which isn't exactly great. And there's also a lot of wear and tear on the nose wheel and the hydraulics of the aircraft. But overall, it works. And that's what the Army Air Force was looking for. A very interesting aspect here is as well that the Navy and the Marine Corps comes into play. And they have overlooked the development of long-range anti-shipping and anti-submarine warfare in the 1930s completely, because you know, there's that old fight between the Army Air Corps and the Navy of who does coastal defense, and the Army Air Corps kind of wins in a way. You know, the B-17 essentially was fielded as a coastal defense bomber initially. That's what it was sold as. And yeah, the Navy and sort of the Marine Corps start to overlook that sort of mission set. But then as World War II happens, they need to draw on a lot of Army Air Corps and Army Air Force aircraft in order to fulfill that mission. That's also why you see all those redesignated patrol bombers, right? Which are basically liberators, or here in this case, Mitchell bombers. Yeah, the PBJ, basically P, patrol, B, bomber, J is the designation for North American. And then 1 is just the first aircraft of that series. Then talking about the mission set that we have here with the B-25 armed with a 75. Now, initially these were fielded with the standard N3 gun sight, which provided off sort of from testing results that I've seen, when you fire them from 1,000 yards, basically 1,000 meters, give or take, you have a rate of fire of 2 rounds per attack at an ammo capacity, total ammo capacity of 21. So why do you only have a rate of fire of 2? Well, the gun had to be manually reloaded. So you had somebody who took out the empty shell casing and then put in a new round, locked it in place, and then signaled to the pilot that he could fire again, and boom, he goes. The development of a better gun sight then provided some improvements. So you have the N9 gun sight, which at a range of 5,000 yards apparently. And this is good because at 5,000 yards, you're still outside the light AA gun range of aircraft, not of aircraft, of ships. You can get about 5 to 6 shells off for your attack. But you do have, with that gun sight, sadly, in the end, poor accuracy, at least at those longer ranges, and the accuracy once again goes up the closer you go, but then also your risk goes up because the ship is going to be shooting back with its light AA guns, so either heavy machine guns or something in the realm of 20 to 30 millimeter. However, we have a very interesting development here, and that is a radar gun sight. Basically, this is a gun sight that works in conjunction with the APG-13A, and that provides range estimation on the target. So as long as you're sort of flying straight and level towards it, and you can get a read on the ship, the gun sight is set automatically for the range. This happens, for example, in the B-25H via the co-pilot. Now, the B-25H actually doesn't have a co-pilot seat anymore. It was taken away. The Navy was not happy about that because of crew fatigue on long-range missions. But this person was essentially supposed to, during the attack, help facilitate the ranging as well as the operation of the gun sight for the pilot, so the pilot can just concentrate on the shooting while the guns are being progressively reloaded after every shot. Now, with this gun sight, we see a marked improvement in the accuracy. So there's some testing that here, I'm drawing on some data here, at 5,000 to 2,000 yards, up to 88% hits with an inexperienced crew against a destroyer-sized silhouette. Now, all of that sounds great. However, how were these planes used in combat with the 75mm cannon? So The B-25G, from everything that I found, appeared first, of course, as a pure sort of cannon configuration. You had one 75mm cannon in there, and you had two 50s that are just providing some backup strafing power. Now, this was deemed completely inadequate because the units that operated B-25s and strafer variants already in the field had at minimum 4, if not more, 50 cals during this whole time, and they really appreciated the 50 cal. So the feedback was sent back, and with the H we have a vanilla loadout of a 75 plus 4 50 cal. So we see some marked improvement there in terms of firepower. Now, I already spoke a little bit about the controversy regarding the deletion of the B-25H Go-Pilot seat, and like basically not necessarily a seat, but the control column. And you look at sort of Jimmy Doolittle and you look at General Arnold, and both of them said, well, we actually don't need this because, you know, on the missions that you're going, you need the gunner to reload the gun. You need, you know, the pilot to shoot the gun. Why is the co-pilot there? We can save on training time. We can save complexity for production. We can get, you know, rid of some unnecessary weight in the aircraft, and those sort of arguments eventually overruled the contestations of the units on the ground, which, you know, you can see both sides of the argument, and that's just how some of these discussions happen sometimes. However, what are the combat results? I haven't talked about those yet, have I? Now, it's very hard finding solid data on the B-25G and H operations that detail exactly how many ships were sunk with the 75 and what exactly the unit said. I've looked at multiple, at least secondary literature sources, and it's always very anecdotal. And until I get some good first-hand data on this, this is a summary of what I could find in the secondary literature. So hopefully in the future we'll find some more data to either confirm or add something to this discussion. Now, the firing accuracy based on what I found is likely lower as the testing suggested. And also only a handful of the B-25Hs were ever fielded with that radar gun sight during the war. Now, why was the accuracy lower? Well, we can make many different arguments for this, you know, from crew fatigue over to the fact that somebody is shooting back at you, over to weather effect, and so on and so forth. So, you know, we know that accuracy both in throwing bombs as well as in shooting is lower in the field than during practice. That's a given across basically everything during World War II and even nowadays, I would say. The other problem is, however, that basically there is, by the time these machines get fielded, there is basically no need anymore for extended anti-shipping operations by B-25s, because a lot of sort of the convoys that the Japanese were operating in Southeast Asia and the South Pacific and so on were no longer there because A, they'd been sunk, or B, you know, Japan had lost those positions, those islands, those countries that it had occupied, and it was closer to the home islands now. And yes, there were still some convoys, but, you know, range is a factor as well, basing is a factor. So suddenly the B-25s in anti-shipping duties saw themselves basically confined to a much smaller number of operational missions in that regard. I did find something for June 1944. Apparently there was some anti-shipping operation on Japanese vessels that were traveling along rivers in China. So in mission number 1, 42 shots of the 75mm were fired. Not a single vessel was sunk. In mission number 2, they sunk apparently some small motor cargo boats. I have no idea what size, but since it was basically called a motorboat, I would assume that this is not larger than, you know, 30, 40 feet, you know, 10 to 15 meters, something like that. And then on mission 3, 1 large steamer was sunk. Okay, so there's some success there. But what transpires out of all of these things is that basically the 75mm becomes a very situational weapon. Yeah, in the Southeast Asia, in the South Pacific, in the Pacific, 50 cals are basically enough for the majority of the missions that the B-25s are flying, both ground and sea-based. And when these aircraft were also used in the Mediterranean or the European theater of operations, the AA defenses and the fighter defenses of the Axis proved apparently to much to have successful missions flown in strafer configurations. And you stayed mainly with the bomber configurations of the B-25 because, well, you know, if there's one thing that the Germans never stopped doing in terms of Daka, it was flak. You know, both small to high caliber. There was a lot of flak going all around. And I can sort of see how this sort of very straight and level approach that you require with a 75mm cannon in order to actually hit the target that you're looking at, whether that would be, you know, a ship or maybe a bunker on the ground. You know, if there's flak around, it's not going to be a healthy exercise. I think all of this points to an interesting lesson. Let's go back to the beginning of this video. The B-25 with the 75mm was developed because of anti-shipping. And anti-shipping was definitely important during World War II, especially in Southeast Asia and the South Pacific. But the B-25G and H were basically designed for a type of combat that didn't materialize, okay? You had small vessels that could be sunk or damaged, at least with 50 cals and bombs. For larger targets, so we're talking about light cruiser and up, so CL, CA, BB, you know, you're not going to be able to attack them even with a 75mm in a gun run. AA and fighter defenses would be too strong. So, you know, fighter defenses, if you're, you know, attacking a larger battle fleet or something, you're not even going to be likely taking part in fleet actions anyway. You either don't have the range or you're not in basing position to do so. And yeah, let's go back to the 75. It's not going to do much damage to these kind of vessels. So the targets that you have left that are of value are definitely large merchant ships, as well as maybe destroyers, as well as submarines. And in the context of the operational theater, it just meant that that didn't happen. Or the weapons that you had at your disposal, the 50 cals, the bombs, were enough to take out those targets consistently. So that decreases the bandwidth of targets that a 75 could theoretically be the go-to solution and would theoretically excel against. All the other targets that you're already targeting, including those that the 75 would do well against, can already be taken out by the weapons that you have installed. And anything that falls outside that bandwidth, the 75 is not going to give you a return on investment. So to sum it up, even though you could potentially go for some ground targets as well, you know, Japanese positions on the ground from, I don't know, a machine gun nest, if you can find it, over to a bunker or something like that. You know, there's not enough tanks in the Pacific theater on the Japanese side to even make anti-tank duties viable. I would say that, you know, this is an excellent example of how there was an aspiration to develop something that made a lot of sense. However, once you actually feel that that capability turned out to be too niche, too specialized, and not provide any additional capability for the force, and it was, on the whole, probably not worth the investment. But that's, you know, a big claim that I'm making here, specifically on the 75 strafer variant of the B-25, and we definitely need a little bit more data there to make a hard call, I would say, on that. But I hope that you enjoyed this look at the B-25. Make sure to also check out World of Tanks if you enjoy driving around targets and shooting at tanks. And I will be back soon with another video on air power. Have a great day and see you in the sky.
The armament on this aircraft is a little unique. In place of a co-pilot, there was a gunner who sat behind the pilot in front of the forward turret. He had the ability to choose from any number of high explosive or armor-piercing rounds arranged around the interior of the forward fuselage. And this is a paddle made in New Guinea by the crews to facilitate the loading of rounds into the breech without squishing their fingers.